Today's guest is Chad Prinkey. He's the founder and CEO of Well Built Construction Consulting. Chad, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Tats. Appreciate it, man.
Awesome, great. I always like topics in and around sales and sort of management around construction. But I mean, you didn't always, you weren't always part of the construction industry. How did you get into the construction industry originally?
So I worked construction. I was a laborer and carpenter and terrible mason and okay roofer. When I was in high school and college, I
Yeah.
worked for I bought my car cash, man, when I was 17 years old with construction money, right? And paid my own bills and didn't I was very independent. I was like, I don't need my parents for anything.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I was wired. I was the third of three boys, and I was much younger, and so I was like, "Don't worry, parents, you don't have to parent anymore." That was
I
kind of
got it. Got it.
my MO. And I did, like I say, I did all that, through high school and then through college to pay the bills, and worked on residential and commercial sites, and learned that I was really not good enough to do any of that stuff. So for me, it was good that I went to college. Not everybody should, but I needed to. I learned a lot. I spent a lot of my time actually. I went to college, believe it or not, for acting. So I spent a lot of time on stage, and I guarantee I was the only construction actor in the program at the University of Maryland when I went there. I don't know if they've had any since, but I know I felt like an odd duck when I was there. But when I graduated college, I got into sales.
Yep.
And I was selling Porsches and Audis, and one of my customers owned a sales training company, and he said, "You should be teaching people how to sell." And I said, "Well, that would be interesting." So I went from this business to consumer environment to a business to business environment, and lo and behold, the only people that I really felt comfortable selling to were construction people. They were the only folks that I really got. So I started bringing in a bunch of construction clients, and one thing led to another. I was helping them to grow with sales training, and then they had all kinds of management problems because they were growing too much. So I had to fix those, and I got myself quite the hands-on education on every facet of running a profitable construction business. And around 2021, which was 13 years into being with that sales training company, I realized I had a huge book of construction business where I was doing full business consulting services on comp plans and acquisition strategies and all kinds of stuff. And I was working at a sales training company. And so ultimately that didn't work. I needed to build a team of experts that could really help and knew more than I did about all these areas that I was consulting in. So I started Well Built Consulting in 2021, and started at zero, and grew the business to 14 people today, and in the past 4 years. And we're growing like crazy, and now I'm experiencing all kinds of fun problems that I've helped to solve for other companies. That's my
There you
background,
go.
man.
Absolutely. It's good to be able to relate, right?
Yes. Yep. 100%.
Now, when you mentioned selling Porsches, um, it's not like a usual. You said retail, but luxury retail, I think it's its own category. I remember when I was young, I was in retail watch sales for a
Really.
little while, and but they were expensive watches, and it's a little bit. I would just imagine selling a very expensive car is a little different. Did they train you on how to sell Porsches?
Yeah, so one of the things that they do a brilliant job in high-end automotive sales, they give you a ton of product training. One of the things they do a terrible job of is providing any useful sales training. But that's okay, because thankfully I had a natural proclivity toward it, and I read several sales books, and took my profession seriously. So I knew everything I needed to know about the car. Like I knew stuff that I've forgotten now, but like I knew when the RPMs at which the 911 would reach max torque, and like all that kind of stuff, which is the stuff you need to know if you're selling to a Porsche buyer. They're nerds. They love their car stats, and what I'll tell you what was cool is I did it for 3 years. In my first like year and a half of doing that work, I dealt with walk-in traffic the same as everyone else. And if people were walking in, we were busy, and if people weren't walking in, we weren't busy. And you'd be amazed at the amount of like Tetris that gets played. I don't know if it gets played anymore, but in 2005 it was Tetris. As we waited for customers to walk in the door. And I just said, you know what, I got to do something different. So it was like the early stages of internet shopping, and I started participating in like Porsche forums, and then started going to Porsche club events and started to make friends with my customers. And next thing I knew, I had like doctors and attorneys and CEOs and stuff like that who I built into my network. And the last year that I did it, I didn't take any walk-in traffic. And in fact, the guy who recruited me was one of the only walk-ins that I ever took. And the reason that I took him is he called the front desk and said, "I want to schedule an appointment with your best salesman." And they were like, "Okay, we'll get you on Chad's schedule." And that's the only way I was able to see him. And I was kind of annoyed. I was like, "Who are you and why did you come here?" When he first walked in, because he wasn't a referral. So even in that type of sale, what I guess I would say is you can build a network and a book of business. And it was humming. And my wife thought I was crazy when I jumped careers, but it ended up turning out really well.
I mean, I guess that's a recruiting tool, right? Like you go into somewhere and say, "Give me your best
It was
salesperson," and then
smart.
you develop a relationship, and hey, you come work for me.
That's exactly right. It was smart. It was a very smart move. Uh, Funny enough, I did not sell him a car. I advised him to buy a Volvo. I was
Oh,
like, you should buy a Volvo. I was like, this is not what you want. And he did. He went and bought a Volvo, and he called me and he was like, so how about that job offer? So it was, I got him out of there in about 25 minutes. I was like, you're
so I
not.
mean, you said you took it upon yourself to sell
Mhm.
Porsches, and because they didn't give you that training, you said you read books. Obviously, you had natural ability, but what were some of your foundational books that got you going to be that top salesperson early?
I remember reading Jeffrey Gitomer's Little Red Book
Okay.
of Selling. My mom got it for me for Christmas when I got the sales job, right? She was like, "Here you go, hun." And I was like, "Okay." And I read it, and I probably
That
read
was
it.
the red one. He has different ones, but the red.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if it's up on the shelf behind me. It's not up on the shelf behind me. One of the early formative books beyond that was then The Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy, which was really, really helpful. And then I got introduced to the Sandler sales methodology, which is a nice structured sale. And that's actually the training that I ended up doing for the guy who
Yeah.
recruited
And
me.
give me a high level of Sandler.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. It's the high level of any good sales process. Sandler is not special or unique, frankly, in any way, other than it does a very good job of bringing structure and replicable training. So they've built a big franchise network off of this structure and replicable training. But you're going to find the same lessons in Challenger and in Carnegie, and the same core lessons stand. And so I'll give those to you. You're not trying to sell anybody anything. You're trying to discover if they should buy what you have. And if you have what they should buy, then you should recommend that they buy it, and you should use the things that they have already shared with you to justify that recommendation. So it's not about a song and dance or dog and pony show. It's about listening, asking awesome questions, making sure that you are an advisor and a consultant, which is precisely why I steered him to buy a Volvo, because I was just being a good consultant. I'm not going to try to sell you my thing. This is exactly what I told him. I said, here's the deal. In 30 minutes, I could have you jumping up and down and bouncing off the walls about this Porsche Cayenne. But nothing's going to change the fact that it does not have a third row like the XC90, and you need it. And you're going to be 6 months from now unhappy with me because I sold you the wrong thing. And that's not what you need, Frank. And also, it's more money for a bunch of great reasons. It costs more, but I'm going to be asking you for a whole lot more money than you told me you have. So
Got
it's all about asking really good questions, responding to what they're giving you, and not forcing your perspective on anybody. And I think when salespeople take that approach, when they're not trying to say, "Do you want what I have? Do you want what I have?" When instead they take a more of a perspective of like, "What do you need? Tell me what you
yeah.
want, and I'll help you to figure out if you should buy what I have. But it's totally possible you shouldn't. And I might tell you that I don't think you should. And I would expect you to tell me that you don't want what I have. It's all good. It changes the dynamic from one of coercion into one of mutual decision making. I'm trying to decide whether they're a good fit. They're just trying to decide whether I'm a good fit, and we should do that together.
Yeah. I mean, so, just take that one step further. What are the reasons you should get sales and marketing, sorry, management training or coaching, and what are the reasons maybe that you don't need it, maybe it's too soon or it's not a right fit? What are
So,
the both sides of that?
so I think training is um, it's only one piece of a puzzle. I've seen and I participated in a lot of training that was a lot of fun and that got people excited and didn't change a damn thing. Because just because you've been trained in a thing doesn't mean your product is any good. It doesn't mean that your operations side can handle the business you're bringing in. It doesn't mean, that your buyer that there's a sufficient market for what you sell. There's a lot of business strategy stuff that goes into figuring out if you're going to be successful in growing sales. And this is the lesson that I learned over the years as people hired me for sales training, and I realized that I needed to bring a lot more to the table. And it's one of the things that fundamentally I don't sell training today. We do training. It's a piece of the puzzle, but it's frankly, never the most important piece. I think when you're as an organization, I'm not going to talk about the individual here for a moment. As an organization, you shouldn't be thinking about training before you think about product quality, before you think about organization structure, before you think about market positioning and your overall go-to-market strategy. You shouldn't be thinking about training salespeople on how to close if those things are out of alignment. You've got some major business strategy things to fit in. Now, when you're really ready for training is you got a gangbusters product, happy clients to prove it, and and an operation side that's ready to grow. And now we can say, all right, let's put the hammer down and grow. And in some sales, like product sales, the barrier to operational readiness is lower. But in what I mostly do, which is working with construction companies, that's a service business and it's very labor heavy. And even if you don't self-perform, even if you're a general contractor and you're subbing out all of the work, you got to have quality superintendents, quality project managers. You have to have risk management and like you have to have all kinds of things prepared to grow. And so, as it relates to sales training specifically, the big question is: are you lined up with the market and ready to grow? And if your product isn't good, that's your number one thing. I'm not gonna, and I can't tell you, they're over the years, and again, later in my career, when I was working at the Sandler company and was doing this much training and this much consulting in a training business, which is very weird. But people would come to me for sales training, and I'd tell them no. I'd be like, look, you don't, that's not what you need. And because of that, I sold a lot of consulting because they were like, man, you're right. We're not ready for that. And they're like, yeah, that's it. I'd be like, do you have a bunch of happy clients? Do you have testimonials? Do you have people that go to the wall for you and say anything with it? And they're like, not really. I'm like, well, then what are we doing? Your big problem is that I don't need to teach your salespeople how to sell a crappy thing. Right.
And
So,
and if so here's the question, right? Because I always, I had an agency for a while. When you have this discussion, and let's say you find um, a hole in their product, and you have to tell them they have a crappy product, how do you deliver that information?
well, the great news is we fixed that. Uh,
There
at
you go.
Well Built, we fix that. So that turns into a sale for me, right? In the sales training business, before I had the capacity to handle those other problems, that sucked because it was like, oh no, now I'm not going to make a sale. And you have, uh, how do you tell somebody that their product is the problem? Becomes much easier if you can solve it. If
That's
you can
true.
say, look, this is
Everyone can point out the problem, but you come with them for a solution. You're the
correct.
hero.
And what I would encourage folks who are maybe in a marketing agency or something like that, and they realize that the product is the problem, I would encourage you to develop relationships with companies that can solve that problem. So that even if you're not going to be the expert in that, because many people should not do what we've done. We've developed a business. So what I did is I said, look, I want to be able to solve every problem
I like this.
for this very narrow segment of the market. So if you're an insurance company and you come to me and you say, hey, can you train my salespeople? I say, no. If you say, can you help me to run a better business? I say, nah, I have no interest. Right. And they're like, wow, you're going to turn down all this business. You came highly referred. I'm like, you must not have talked to one of my customers because all my customers are contractors and would have told you that I don't work with anybody but construction companies or service contractors. That's it.
Yeah,
Right. So those are the only people that we work with. But because we've gone very narrow, which comes with some inherent risk, it's allowed us to go very broad in what we can do for that segment of the market.
sure.
Um, but if you're not going to do that, and like I say, not everybody should, if you're not going to narrowly specify who your customer is and who your customer is not, then you better narrowly specify the service that you're going to bring to the table. And what I would encourage you to do is to be a resource provider, a connector. And if you're a salesperson that sells construction products, you should know people that could be beneficial to you should know a good bonding agent. You should know a good insurance company. You should know a good construction banker. You should know, right? All these different things that could add value to your client when they tell you, hey man, we're having trouble paying our bills. You should be able to say, I've got somebody, you got to pay us. And I've got somebody that you should talk to that could maybe help you to turn around maybe a fractional CFO or a company like Wellbuilt.
Yeah. So essentially, you need to be that person on the other end of the quote unquote red phone, if there's an issue.
Yeah. And if you are that person, it's amazing. You could be selling brick and block and get the phone call from your customer that says, hey man, do you know a good roofing subcontractor? And if you are the person that they call for that, you're probably their go-to provider for brick and block, right? And that's what I mean by being a resource, a
Yeah.
connector.
So for your set of services, whether it's your team of 14 or the people around you, what type of skill sets, individuals, resources have you surrounded yourself with?
People smarter than me. That has been, and I mean that genuinely. I I am way more confident than I have any right to be. That's a part of my personality. I'm super confident. But I also try to balance that with a realism of like, I'm also not nearly as smart as I need to be. And I'm not as experienced as other people. I mean, there's no way that a single human can have the kind of experience that you want to surround yourself with. So people smarter than me and people with deeper and different experience than me, those are the people that I've really tried to surround myself with, and specifically experience that's in the shoes of our clients. What I try to do, I bring in people that understand being a contractor, being a construction contractor, and being a service contractor, which are very different things. And I've spent a lot of time in both of those industries. So I'm very comfortable with both, but I'm not as comfortable as one of our team members has a 30-year career as a president of divisions in service contracting business. Another one of our people was the president of a subcontracting company. Another one of our people was a project executive at a top general contractor. And I could keep going, vice president of sales at a subcontractor. And I've never been any of those things. So what I do is I hire these people with this awesome background and expertise and that know-how. I give them the playbook for how to teach people to what we believe, how to build well-built companies, and they use their background and expertise, along with my training on how to be a consultant. That's what they don't have. I've been a consultant for 18 years. They have not. So being a consultant is a different skill set. So I have to teach them that. So what I lack in their, living in the business experience, I bring to the table 18 years of consulting experience, and we bring those things together nicely to work off of each other.
Yeah, for sure. Any stories you want to share about, you know, key insights and stuff that you've worked on, particularly in construction, that would be relevant to, anyone listening?
Yeah, I think there are. I mean, I we could go down 100 different roads, but since we're talking about sales, I'll keep it in the vein of sales a bit, since that's been such a focal point of our discussion. In construction, there is a prevailing attitude that you bid, and if you're low, you win. And if you're not low, maybe you have a relationship with somebody that gives you last look, and then you get low or close to low and you win. And this turns into very low close ratios, a lot of waste in particularly for construction companies estimating, for construction products companies quoting, which isn't as painful of an exercise, but it's still waste. And when I help contractors, so there's one contractor in particular, they had it was a subcontractor. They had an 8% win rate, which is just about industry average. That's pretty common for a subcontractor, and that's on projects pursued. That's not on every bid that's submitted, right? Because you can bid the same job to four companies. That's only one bid, for the sake of the math, if anybody's ever wondering. But I, came in and did an analysis. We came in. I played a small role in it, but came in and did an analysis on what it was costing them to put together one single estimate. And when we produced the math for this contractor, it was along the lines of $10,000 in man hours to produce an estimate. And that was news to them. And then when we showed them that math and we said, you're currently spending and you're currently wasting, right? Losing 92% of your projects. You're wasting, and the math, it was astronomical. It ended up being, upwards of 2.5, $2.8 million a year in wasted estimating. It's a relatively big company. And I said, our mission is to reclaim 12% of that in the next year. We want to reclaim 12% of that. We're going to raise our win rate to 20%. And there's a combination of disciplines that you need to implement. And the first discipline is that we don't bid to strangers. If you get invited to bid by somebody that you don't know, get to know them. If they're not willing to get to know you, move on. Don't just submit a bid. It's not a good use of your time. And when you tell them that you're not going to submit a bid because they're not willing to give you time, you might be amazed at how many people will all of a sudden give you time because they do need your number. And so that was a game changer. So that was rule number one. Discipline number one, I should say. Discipline number two is every time we submit a bid, we get a proposal review meeting. We do not submit bids and then wait to hear back. We submit bids and we get in front of them and we sit down and review our bid. We do a scope review, a proposal review, whatever you want to call it, but we get a chance to get in front of them after we submit our bid. So we did that. And then the third discipline is you are going to say no to projects that are outside of your sweet spot. And we defined their sweet spot, their geography, size, scope, source, all these different types of factors. And we implemented a go, no go filter on the front end of their CRM that automatically screened out. They didn't even see them. They automatically screened out the trash. so that they never had hard decisions to make. And all they saw were the projects that fit their sweet spot. And then they followed the parameters of we got to never bid to strangers and always get a proposal review. Did they always get a proposal review? No, but they got a proposal review the better part of 70%. And we tracked that in their system. Anyway, in 1 year, we didn't just go from 8% to 20%. We got almost to 30%. And in that year, they ended up winning way more of their target work. They ended up having a much happier estimating team that wasn't working nights and weekends to keep up with trash. And everybody, the sense of success that comes for your estimating team of knowing that they're not wasting their time is seismic. Now, is 30% amazing? I would tell you for a subcontractor, it's pretty darn good. It's pretty darn
Yeah,
good. It's hard to do a whole heck of a lot better than that. I've been a part of some subcontractors that get up over the 50% mark. Usually that just means we need to raise our prices. So
there you go. I'm curious now. You said screen out. So how did you screen out? Did it go to someone else not involved in the estimating or sales process to screen out or
yep.
right? Because
Yep. There's a
once it
sales
makes it
admin.
into the sales process, you're like, well, yeah, you know what? You never know. Like,
There's a sales admin. And so in this company, it's a bigger company, but it's not a huge company. Sales admin wasn't a designated role. So we designated their gosh, what was their it's a woman, call her bid coordinator, uh, I think was her role.
yes.
That was the front end manager, the sales administrator. So they're the one that just deleted everything that didn't fit the sweet spot. And again, she would bring in their weekly sales meeting, she would bring anything that was on the line. She would
Yeah.
be like, "This one's close." And
And then you just really go over the little details to see which way the needle moved.
And a lot of that has to do with backlog, right? How much sales we like, how much do we need? When does this project say it's going to go? Based on when they say it's going to go, what does our backlog look like at that time? Crap, we really need work during that time. What the heck? Let's go ahead and bid it, kind of thing. The rule isn't that we never break the rules. The rules that when we break it, we always know that we're breaking the rules.
There you go. Because I always wonder, because I know it's hard for everyone, but at least that you're getting rid of a bunch of them that are out of range, right? That's the
Yeah,
key.
and just avoiding a lot of conversation.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Cool.
avoiding a lot of unnecessary conversation and waste internally.
No, very cool. I love that story.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously very good at communicating, but here's the thing. You originally took your acting classes and stuff, and tell me one thing that you've learned from back then that, has helped you, or a little trick or insight on your sales and whatnot. What thing did you learn in school that still stays with you that is helpful?
I'll tell you, when you are on stage, not on screen, I did a little bit of that, but I did a lot more on stage. When you are on stage, you learn to read the audience. You learn body language at a level that is almost it's so body language, reading body language is instinctual. It's something that we are, I think, hardwired to do. You can see, like, even monkeys when they're trying to make friends, they smile and they put their hands up and their eyebrows lift, right? That's it. Like, that's not something we learn. That's just something that we do. That's in our wiring, and the ability to read body language, I think, is innate for people that don't have abnormal wiring in their brains, because I know that's also a thing. But if you're normal cognitively, you're born with some of this ability to read body language. When you are on stage, you become a doctorate in it. You learn a ton from the way the crowd reacts, down to eye contact, and where how they're holding their hands, and just the smallest of facial expressions that give you a hint that you're heading down the right track or the wrong track. And your ability to read a situation through body language is, I think, critical in all of the human to human interactions that we have. I don't care if you're a salesperson or a project manager or a CEO, your ability to read the situation is crucial. And so, paying very close attention to how what I'm saying connects or fails to connect is something that I use every single day to ensure that the message is on point. When somebody gives me weird body language, like I'll pause and be like, "Are we okay? Did I say something wrong? I'm sorry." And it's like you're reading my mind. And sometimes you get it wrong, and that's funny too. Yeah, they're like, "No, not at all. I just burped," and you're like, "Oh, very good." You know, that's okay too. Uh,
Interesting. Yeah, because you can
yeah,
always pivot, right? If you're off the mark, you're explaining it to the way that they don't understand, or a line of reasoning doesn't resonate with them, you can always take a different approach.
and you used a word there that's really important, which is resonate. To be resonant is the goal. We want to make sure that our human to human interactions are resonant as opposed to dissonant. And I think people who are um, lack the self and other awareness to be able to see, I just hit a nerve, I hit a wrong one, will continue to hit that same wrong nerve unknowingly and have no idea that they just talk themselves out of a sale, or they just rub somebody the wrong way to where they've disengaged and they're mad at you, that type of stuff. And so, um, your what I would say is that time on stage hones that. I probably have spent at least 8 to 10,000 hours in my life. I was also the lead singer of a rock band, right? So like I did that, and we toured all over the country for 10 years, like all that, all over the East Coast, not the country. But we toured all over the East Coast for years and all that. And I've spent just so much time before I even started doing what I do. I've spent so much time on stage. And then in my profession now, I did the math on this. I've actually done over 4,800 presentations in my career to stack on top of all that time on stage. There is no substitute for time on stage to make you great. So if you're afraid of public speaking, recognize that that is probably holding you back in some of these areas of really honing your ability to read the room.
Very cool. It's like you said, no excuse. It's a skill that can be learned or improved.
Yep. Yep. It
Great.
does come more naturally for some than others, no doubt about it. You can't shut me up, as you've been able to, I'm sure, ascertain.
Well, no, that's what you're here for, sharing your information. Is there anything that I didn't ask you, but you want to share?
Gosh, Tats. I think maybe just a comment on the state of our industry, the state of the construction industry in general. It's an exciting time and place to be involved with the construction industry, more so today. I feel like the construction industry is uh, going through an incredible time of um, innovation and evolution, from everything to the construction materials we're using, to the technology that we're using to construct faster, smarter, safer. And, even on the design side, there's some pretty incredible stuff coming down the line. And if there are people who have kind of the vision of the construction industry in their mind as this old school place where people go if they can't make it in a different industry. I would really encourage you to rethink that perspective. It is different, better, and exciting as all get out in this industry. And then I think the next 15 to 20 years are going to be an incredible time to be involved for people who've been to college, people who want to skip college. There's incredible amount of opportunity. So just something that I love, the people who dedicate their lives to building the world around us. And man, I can't think of a better time to be involved.